Good morning, everyone. We gather here today to reflect upon our love for our people in the Holy Land. And as a church leader myself, I have special love for that place, and I have enthusiasm for bringing the message of that place to our people. And as I do often have a captive audience, I'm able to relentlessly speak to them about the situation in the Holy Land and how we strive for peace and what we can do for them. In your books, you'll see biographies of the gentlemen that are going to be on the stage today. And I'd like to introduce them to you and have them come forward now. We have three gentlemen. The first is Canon Trond Bekkervik from Oslo. Please come forward, Canon. The Canon received last night the 2012 Faith and Path to Peace Award, and we honor you especially today. And thank you for being here. If you would be so kind as to take a seat to the left. He is a convener, as you know, of the Council of Religious Institutions of the Holy Land in Oslo, and certainly knows the effect of faith in reconciliation. Secondly, we have from Washington, Bishop Richard Graham, who is the Washington Bishop of the Synod for the Evangelical Lutheran Church of America. Please come forward, Bishop. You may have noticed in your book that he also is a man of reconciliation, as he is a Harvard graduate and of Catholic University of America. Please be seated. And last, I'd like to bring forward Mark Moseni, who is from San Francisco. Where are you, Mark? Ah, there you are. He also knows and is a man of interfaith and reconciliation, works in radio and TV, a man of building bridges, and being in San Francisco, I guess that has something to do with the Golden Gate Bridge as well. Please be seated. First, I'd like to have the Canon come. Canon, are you comfortable remaining at your seat and speaking to the microphone there rather than coming to the
whatever you choose.
Whatever is comfortable for you.
I'm fine.
Wonderful.
Anywhere.
Could you begin by speaking to us?
Okay. Thank you for this opportunity, and again, many thanks for the Path of Peace Award, which I was honored with yesterday evening. I'm happy to come here and speak to you because you represent a support group, I should say, for peace in the Holy Land by strengthening the Palestinian Christians and the Palestinian community, because I believe that self-confidence and strength is the best equipment you can have for entering work for peace and peace negotiations. I am the convener of something called the Council of Religious Institutions of the Holy Land. This council grew forth in the aftermath of many years of hard work with religious leaders in the Holy Land, and especially an initiative taken by the Archbishop of Canterbury to gather all the religious leaders of the Holy Land in Alexandria to reject religiously motivated violence in 2002. There was a follow-up. After a while, the religious leaders of the Holy Land, Christians, Muslims, and Jews, decided that they wanted to take charge of what they were doing themselves, and they asked me if I could help them. I said, it's your work, it's not mine, it's not a Norwegian initiative, this comes from you and has to be carried by you, it's your responsibility. We then established the Council of religious institutions, because until then, the interreligious work in the Holy Land had been done by individuals who were concerned and committed to meet and also committed to peace. We then said that in order to have a continuity in this work, and in order to oblige and commit not only the persons, but also the bigger institutions, we will make it a Council of Religious Institutions. So the Chief Rabbinate of Israel decided to join in, and as you may know, the Chief Rabbinate of Israel is the highest religious authority among the Jewish population of Israel. It is closely linked to the Prime Minister's office, so it's also an official body which carries out official duties in Israel. The next was the Christian leaders. And you will know that there is a meeting of bishops and patriarchs of the Holy Land. 13 of them. 3 patriarchs, 1 Franciscan custos, and the rest are bishops of different churches. They are all there in a hierarchical order. Number 1 is the Greek Orthodox Patriarch. Number 2 is the Latin Patriarch. Number 3 is the Armenian Patriarch. And number 4 is the Franciscan Custos. Why is that? It's because they are big landowners. And they have been taking care of the churches for centuries. And then as a Lutheran, we are number 11, I think it is. I am a Lutheran. And we discussed how can we limit the council in such a way that it's not an endless number of participants coming. Well, with the Jews and the Muslims, it would have been easy. We could have said 5. With the Christians, how could we get these 13 to agree on sending 5? They said we can't do that. I'm telling you now a secret. So we had to say, well, we kept it open. In fact, the most active members of the council from the Christian side are the Greek Orthodox Patriarch, the Latin Patriarch, the Armenians, and the Anglicans and the Lutherans. Then on the Muslim side, we had the Supreme Judge of the Sharia courts participating, Sheikh Tamimi. After a while, you will know that he retired, and we had a bit of an in-between situation. Then the Palestinian president, Mahmoud Abbas, decided to appoint the Minister of Religious Affairs. So he is now a member of the council. And he comes with some more people, and we also have continued our relationship to the Supreme Judge of the Sharia courts. So he is, so to say, in the context, and we consider him part also our work. What did we want to do? Well, we wanted to commit the institutions to working together. For a long, long time, it was necessary just to keep meetings going in order to create the kind of trust which is necessary among religious leaders for them to do something together. And it took a long time. Now we have a network of religious leaders linked to institutions who can call each other when there is a crisis situation, who have decided to stay together whatever the crisis is. We had a hard time during the Gaza war, but we managed to keep the network. We did not manage to get any joint statement, but we managed to keep the network going, and we came out on the other side and still had the council there. For the time being, I can describe it as if we have moved from being a place where there is only a dialogue to a place where we do something together. We have a staff of 2 persons in Jerusalem. We have a homepage where you jot down the name of the homepage. It's www.CRIHL, Council of Religious Institutions in the Holy Land, .org. There you can find material, and you can see that we are present and active. We work on, for the time being, on 3 issues. One is we are concerned about the desecration of holy sites, which goes on in the Holy Land. Mosques are being burned, monasteries are being tagged, and so are also some synagogues. So we try to deal with that and see how we can create a consciousness about the importance of holy sites. We have a program running on emerging religious leaders, where we have 5 Muslims, 3 Christians, 8 Jews coming together in a 1-year program, and we hope to continue that. We've financed it now for 1 year and hope to continue it. And lastly, we have organized a big study of Palestinian and Israeli textbooks, where we look for the concept, the image of the other in the Palestinian and Israeli school books. We are about to finish that and discuss how we're going to publish it. It's the first ever parallel study of Palestinian and Israeli school books. And I can say to you that we from the first second have had the cooperation of the Palestinian Ministry of Education and also the Palestinian Prime Minister, which has been very good and very encouraging. So these are things we're doing where our commitment is strongest now, and then we also have other issues we discuss, and we have plans which we try to develop. Finally, it's important for me that it is the religious institutions which are committed to this. We have a hard time sometimes keeping some of the institutions inside our work, but if we can provide a vision, if we can provide the kind of leadership where dialogue and discussion is possible, we can do it. On the other hand, we know that this is a conflict where there's one weak part and one strong part, but there's also one part which considers itself vulnerable, and one part which knows that it has the right to exist as a state, as a self-determining people. And in that, we are trying to move forward. Thank you. Sorry for using so long.
Thank you, Canon. I'd like to hold off any questions until all 3 speakers have addressed us. So I ask Bishop if he would now speak to us.
Thank you. Thank you. I speak to you with considerable humility here. I am far from an expert on the topic before us, and there are probably lots of people in this room who could tell you more interesting things than I am likely to in the next few minutes. But I think that it's important for us to hold on to the notion that religious institutions and leaders are not going to be the primary peacemakers or peace builders in the conflicts about which we're concerned. The conflict that concerns all of us is not primarily a religious conflict. It's a conflict that involves politics and territory and power, and those things are the realms of political leaders to resolve. Our job, I think, as religious leaders, as people involved in religious institutions, is to make that work easier and to prepare a way for it, if possible, and to show what peace might look like. But I can say, on the basis of my own experience in my own denomination, that when we become, as it were, simply another political force, even a political force for good, we give up a great deal of what comes to us most naturally. And to put this in overtly theological terms, God has not promised to prosper our political viewpoints. What we do that makes for peace in humility and what we do that calls out for justice for all people, God does promise to prosper that. When God will do this is something we wait to see, of course. But I simply want to make sure that I say, again, out of my own personal experience and on the basis of what I know about the Evangelical Lutheran Church in America, that simply to act as another political player in the region is not wise for us. That said, of course, there are things that we can do and that we are called upon to do. And again, any of you could have thought of some of these just as easily as I did. It seems that religious institutions and religious leaders and religious people need to practice everywhere the arts of interfaith and ecumenical conversation and dialogue, that we need everywhere to work toward mutual understanding and some mutual hopes for peace and for prosperity. And by everywhere, I also mean where we live as well as in the Holy Land. It's always interesting to me to be in conversation with the people I'm responsible for, many of whom have strong, heartfelt concerns about interfaith dialogue and ecumenical dialogue in Palestine and in the Holy Land. And when I say to them, well, do you ever talk about this with your neighbors? They all go, I don't even know my neighbors. What do you mean, you know? But many people, especially people here around Washington, have neighbors of different religions close to them. It seems to me that a way that we could be vehicles for peace and vehicles for understanding would be to speak to our neighbors, people closest to us. And that would also be, I think, give us a little more moral standing when we try to encourage other people in other parts of the world to be kinder to their friends and their neighbors, if we did that ourselves as well. Anyway, I think that whatever we can do that supports institutions and people in the Holy Land who are involved in that kind of interfaith bridge building, whatever we can do that supports people who are reaching outside their own communities to touch other communities, whatever we can do that encourages that would be good for us. The example that I know the most about in that regard is Augusta Victoria Hospital, which is in East Jerusalem. It's an interesting place. Anybody know about that? So it's not an entirely Lutheran secret, but I was born there. Really? Augusta Victoria Hospital is really I'm going to be bold to say the major medical center for Palestine. I hope that's not saying too much. It's an interesting place. Augusta Victoria was built originally as part of the reflection of the Prussian government to establish itself as the custodian of real Christian life in the Holy Land. You know that there was a period of time when the German government and the British government contested back and forth who could do the most interesting thing. Augusta Victoria looks for all the world like an outpost of Bavaria or something in Jerusalem. The church looks like you would find it in Potsdam or something. But it is a wonderful place, and they are in a strong medical partnership with the Hadassah hospital system in Jerusalem. The exchange of medical residents, exchange of patients, exchange of expertise. So those two hospital systems have decided that they will not duplicate each other's medical efforts. And Hadassah is a primary place for heart surgery and for women's health care, and Augusta Victoria is a primary place for kidney care and cancer treatment. Those two hospital systems have worked faithfully together in good times and bad times. If we encourage that kind of thing, I think we are also doing important work. I checked yesterday both of the websites for those hospitals, for Augusta Victoria and for Hadassah. There is no mention on either website of the other. So they're doing their work together surreptitiously. And that seems to me to be something that we could change. We could help them to be braver about announcing their partnership. That's the kind of thing that we could do. The other thing that I think religious people and religious institutions and religious leaders could well do is the kind of personal pilgrimage contact that's already been mentioned here. The Living Stones pilgrimages, that kind of travel is really, really important, I believe. Again, I know from personal experience, Lutheran Christians from Washington go often on vacation or on travel to the Holy Land. And when people come back, they're excited to tell me about their trip. And I say to them, well, did you worship in a local church? Did you eat in, what kind of place did you stay in? Where'd you eat? Again and again and again, people say, you know, we didn't really talk to any Palestinians. And we had our own worship service. We didn't get into any churches. We stayed in the Holiday Inn, you know. That is wrong. That's just wrong. The travel that engages people's hearts and minds really has to engage them with other real human beings. And the kind of trip that would allow people, as HCEF does, the kind of trip that would allow people to meet others who are their Christian brothers and sisters, their Jewish brothers and sisters, their Muslim brothers and sisters, for conversation that actually involves the human spirit. That's different than just touring, and that I believe is also important. What religious institutions and religious leaders do in this realm is what they really should do every place. They should pray. I'm not sure we do that enough. We should listen more. There are voices that want to address themselves to us, and then after that we can speak. But praying and listening ought to take more of our time. One last thing. I heard earlier this week another presentation about the Conference of Religious Institutions of the Holy Land from David Rosen, who's also in Washington right now. A Jewish rabbi who speaks all over the world. What fascinated me about his presentation of that work is how much it was like yours. That what he talked about from really the Israeli point of view about that organization was the same spirit of hopefulness, the same spirit of cooperation, the same conversation about how difficult it is to make the pieces fit together. He was, I mean, you could have given each other speeches. It was very touching, really, that way. I think that there are just such wonderful opportunities for people who are interested in getting involved personally. I think opportunities for investment, opportunities for travel, opportunities for study. I think the best ones of these opportunities are the ones that cost us something. That it's wrong for people like me, people like us, to be so involved as to tell other people what they should do in situations in which we have sometimes ourselves not nearly as much personal investment as we might think. A rule of thumb is that we would be allowed to speak to the extent that we've paid up some way or other. And I think that that's something that religious institutions and religious leaders can say and need to say more loudly.
Thank you, Bishop, for your words. And now, Mark, please speak to us.
Thank you very much, Juan. Hello, everyone. I want to first thank and praise God for the opportunity to be here at this conference. And then I want to thank Sir Reza Rabi for his kind invitation to this beautiful conference. I also want to thank Ms. Karen Gaynor and also Christine Hill for their wonderful help in coordinating my efforts to be here. My name is Mark Musini, and I am an executive at Wireless Cloud TTH, a company in Turkey. as well as an executive with Building Bridges and A9 television station. We broadcast to between 15 to 20 million people in the Middle East. We have started to organize our efforts to San Francisco, which we started a radio show there. We're also going to be starting in New York. We actually have an affiliate now in Jordan, and one that will be starting in Israel. I want to just mention a little bit about my business background first, since this is a conference that was, it's kind of a mixed dual conference of business and our faith. I work with private investors in Turkey. We invest in a range of different businesses. That includes technology, media, construction, as well as the film industry. Our partners are pretty much in just about every industry that you can think of. I heard yesterday, the panel here that was discussing investments in Palestine, and also there seems to be some R&D that is happening, or there are plans for R&D to develop in Palestine. And if there are innovative products and or technologies, please let's keep in touch, and you guys may bring that to my attention. I also work to our network of investors. I do work with the Saudi Kingdom, and we have investors that are looking for products as well. So that's a little bit about the business side. With that said, I want to kind of move into the main topic here, which is the role of religious institutions and religious leaders in helping to build peace. Yesterday it was brought to my attention by Reverend William here. There's an article that was on the Wall Street Journal opinion page, on the front page. And the title was, "Enlisting the Biblical Abraham as Peace Broker. The notion of Abrahamic religion tries to reconcile Judaism, Christianity, and Islam." I thought this was a very interesting article, since this is exactly what we're doing at Building Bridges. That is to say that we're trying to reconcile and focus on the similarities in the monotheistic faiths, the Abrahamic religions, namely Judaism, Islam, and Christianity. And yesterday I also listened to what I thought was a little bit of a painful conversation discussing how to solve some of the problems facing our Palestinian brothers and sisters. Be they Muslim or Christian, I feel that they're feeling that pain not only individually in their lives and with their families, but it's affecting, that includes their jobs, their careers, but it's also affecting the community as a whole and their identities. To address that, I will go into what we do at Building Bridges on a more broader scope. I don't want to get into the theological side of this. Rather, it's more action-oriented. What are we doing as religious leaders to engage and to make a difference? The first thing that we're doing with Building Bridges is that we are educating Muslims. Now, I'm a Muslim, and I feel that it is very important to educate our Muslim brothers and sisters in Islam, because it can, in the times that we live in now, religion seems to be taken out of context. There are many people that are inciting hatred. They are promoting violence and fanaticism. And this is all very foreign to the spirit of Islam and the Quran. What we are using to educate people is media, and that is why I'm involved in media. Because you can get the message out to the most people and make the most impact through one broadcast. We live in a time where technology is just unbelievable. And we can connect from here to San Francisco, to Palestine, to wherever. 10 or 15 years ago, that probably wasn't as easy. But through Skype connections and so forth, now we can just connect instantly. So what we're using is, I want to just show this is, for example, here's a book, and this is not a promotion of the book. We don't charge for profit. These books are free to download. If you want the hard copy, all we ask is the price for the cost of this book. That's all. But the title of this book is A Call for Unity. And this is a call for the three religious Abrahamic faiths to work together. And it goes through the description of how we can focus on our commonalities rather than to focus on the differences which the larger media likes to focus upon. Another book that I'd like to highlight is Pleasant Words from the Gospel, because most Muslims don't really understand, I believe that most Muslims really don't have an in-depth understanding of the Christian faith and religion and what the Bible actually says. So we've written this book and we've distributed, and we have enormous reaction to the book, all positive. And finally, the last one is Wisdom and Sound Advice from the Torah. So we're using these kinds of tools to reach out and to eliminate the differences that people are highlighting. And it's been wonderful. And it's been easy to build bridges when you have an open heart, one that all three religions promote. For example, compassion, mercy, brotherhood, unity, love. In the Islamic faith, it is prescribed that it is actually a commandment. It is obligatory to protect Christian and Jewish people and to love them and to make sure that they are safe. But you don't hear this in the mainstream media. All you hear is, the differences and how, the Palestinian and the Israeli people are fighting each other. And so people have this mindset, this consciousness that, this is what religion is all about. It's not really an attack upon Islam. It's actually an attack upon religious people. And this is why it's important for us as religious people and people of faith to work together and bring our resources for intellectual capital together and to make this promotion, to stand up and have a voice. Two of the events that we are working on directly, which I feel will, the short term is that, we're making investments in many different places in the world, and Palestine could be one of them. Okay, I was not aware of a lot of the different business opportunities until yesterday, and it was very enlightening to hear the panel speak here. The other part is that we are working on an initiative to work for the union of the Middle Eastern countries, and that includes a solution to Israel being a part of the solution. That includes the Muslims, the Christians, and the Jewish people. And if you have a unity and a union that is based upon the foundation of love, brotherhood, unity, compassion, respect, tolerance, true democracy, and you have economic opportunities where you can have free trade between countries, This is what I believe is the ultimate and the most golden solution for the region. Some of the difficulties I heard yesterday of trying to use, methods of the diaspora, which is great. It's the short-term solution. That is, those are opportunities, or investing in Chile or other places. But why not have the ability to coordinate and trade directly amongst the neighboring countries? The Middle East has 2/3 of the world's resources in terms of oil, gas, natural elements. And so it is why it is such a hotbed in the first place. But it's really silly that we can't figure out a solution where there's plenty of space for everyone to live in. We have our faith, and each scripture teaches peace, love, and unity, and why people cannot live in that place in comfort, why they cannot travel. Why does Israel have to be living like it's in a cage? Why they have this wall that's there? So we have to ask these questions, and it takes raising the consciousness of people and enlightening them based upon what the scriptures actually teach us. If we follow the scriptures directly and not take it as just another book that's on the shelf, we will see that it has the solutions for all of our problems, because it's given to us by the divine creator, because he knows us best. The other project that we are working on is a major conference that would be held in Istanbul, Turkey. I am looking to contact people not only in this conference, but our group is in contact with many rabbis and Christian leaders and Muslim leaders that will bring together the greatest minds, even some artists and people of science background, and people that are intelligent, enlightened, and so that we can discuss these matters further and take actions. We're putting this conference together to have concrete actions afterwards. As you guys know, there are many conferences everywhere, just like this one. Well, maybe not as good as this one, but they are out there. And what normally happens is people come and they'll speak, and then afterwards they'll go on and in their own lives, and they're distracted. So we're looking to have some concrete actions after the conference, and we have some high-level people that are very interested in this. I forgot to also mention, for the initiative for the Middle East unity, we have talked to many think tanks in the United States at high levels. Now, these are people that are advising strategy to people in Washington and so forth, and they absolutely love our idea. We are in the process of building that consensus and that coalition to make a difference for not only the Middle East as a broad region, but also for Palestine. And I don't want to take any more time, because I think my time is up, but that's a little bit about what we're doing, and I appreciate again, and I want to thank you guys for your time, for listening to me.
I thank all three of you for being here today to speak to us on reconciliation and bridge building, which is so important. I'd like to give an opportunity now for anyone who is here today to come up to the microphone and ask a question, address a concern. Please state your name and where you're from, and which speaker you would like to answer your question.
I'm just going to say from back here, I can say it loud enough. Mark, do you have another book coming up, Pleasant Words from the Quran? Because that would be helpful to the Christian community.
That's a very good question, Christine. The website that contains these books, there's over 300 books, and that is included also. So,
what's that called again?
The website is www.harun YAHYA.com.
Could you repeat that?
Sure. It is the three W's dot HAR. Yes. HAR as in Robert. UN. And then YAHYA. It's Harun Yahya. Harun is the it was the name of the brother of Moses, Aaron. Harun is the Arabic. And Yahya is John the Baptist. So just for clarification, but the Arabic is Harun Yahya. It's not an Arabic website, by the way. It's a beautiful English website that you can access.
Yes, we have a question. Microphone needs to be turned on.
I have a question specifically for Bishop Graham with the Evangelical Lutheran Church of America. I wonder if you could perhaps share with us in what way building peace and reaching out a hand to non-Christian brothers and sisters would strengthen evangelization or would further the mission of any church in sharing Christ's word.
Sure. Well, I think it's kind of a parody of a certain kind of Christian evangelism that's in our culture, where people think that the major reason for conversation with other folks, especially interreligious conversation, is conversion. That somehow or other that what we really want to do when we talk to our neighbors is make them believe as we do. You know? And I think that's, I think, as I say, that's a sort of a parody, because in fact, the major strengthening of faith that happens in a conversation is people's own faith is strengthened. You know, when you get in a conversation with another person, you discover that other person brings gifts as well, and your faith is strengthened. You're the one who's being evangelized in that conversation. The other thing is that we tend to believe that all evangelization is really the work of God. We just try not to be in the way of it. And we try to be in a kind of conversational relation with other people that makes God's work easier and not harder. But I think that there are lots of ways that Christians can bear witness that don't have to be coercive and that don't have to stir up in everybody's mind the notion of, well, our closet conviction that people who aren't like us are really in trouble. I don't know if that's helpful. What I do think is that if we would be more engaged with the people around us, and in these days there are people around us who live far away too. I mean, we're in contact with people in lots of different ways. If we'd be more engaged with the people around us, God would do a lot of interesting things that we would be proud of, that would be constructive of the human community no matter what. A long answer to your question. Does that make any sense? Okay.
Go ahead, please.
Thank you very much. I'm Paul Verdine. I'd like to ask each of our three speakers to try to, because I think we need to bring this conference a little bit up to date. I've heard a lot of talk about dialogue, but the unfortunate reality is that 20 years of dialogue have produced absolutely nothing for peace and justice for the Palestinians and Israelis. The current hot topics developing tools, strategies are boycott, divestment, and sanctions. And I'd like to ask each of you your opinions about those, particularly in light of the fact that this year the Presbyterian Church USA and the United Methodist Church have adopted the boycotting of all West Bank products made by the Israeli settlers, to boycott purchasing those, divestment from U.S. companies such as Caterpillar, who are directly involved in the oppression of the Palestinian people, almost passed by the Presbyterian Church. And just a month ago, 15 major U.S. church leaders sent a letter to our Congress asking them to investigate whether the Israeli government is violating important U.S. laws governing military aid, and if so, to interrupt U.S. military aid until such time as Israel complies with those U.S. laws. Please, what are your opinions on boycott, divestment, and sanctions? Thank you.
Take turns.
Yeah. I can answer very quickly because as a facilitator of dialogue and cooperation between the three faiths, I have absolutely no official opinion on this.
What is your personal opinion?
I don't have a personal opinion if I'm going to continue in that role.
Well, I have all kinds of personal opinions, and they change from day to day. I think that that boycott and divestment and sanctions all have an appropriate role to play in all kinds of conflicts. My concern about them is that again, they cost us as individuals precious little. That is to say, we are inclined when we get into that kind of discourse to insist that somehow or other somebody else ought to do something to fix the problem. I think that there's a great deal to be said for somebody being engaged enough to look through his or her own investment portfolio, or to look at his or her own retirement account and say, darn it, I'm not going to hold that stock. I'm not going to hold this stock. That's different, though, than what usually happens, which is just that we take votes in large bodies and then think that because we voted one way or another, we've personally changed the situation. I don't know if that comes across clearly enough in what I'm saying, but I am pretty sure that if people would take the trouble to get involved enough to figure out what would be their own boycott policy or their own divestment policy, that can only be good. But it cannot be particularly helpful, I don't think, for especially church bodies to make general statements the way we're inclined to do and then to walk away. The letter you mentioned, people know the famous letter that the religious leaders wrote to members of Congress a little while ago? No. Anyway, members of heads of religious bodies in the United States, including the presiding bishop of the Evangelical Lutheran Church in America, wrote a letter to members of Congress several weeks ago calling for this investigation of military aid to Israel. Is that, Paul, am I right about that? Yes. Right. Okay. I personally think, are we allowed to say whatever we think? I mean, I personally think that letter was a mistake. And I'll tell you why I think so. Congress was not in session. And when Congress returns to session, it will be looking, I hope, to settle this sort of problem related to the onrushing fiscal cliff over which we appear to be interested in hurling ourselves. There is a time for a letter like this that would have been addressed to Congress. There was a time for that. But when you send a letter like that, and Congress isn't sitting and isn't going to be anywhere near to taking up the problem, that just looks to me like you've produced a document so you can get a press release out of it. And I think that was wrong. I think that was wrong. Now, it would be a good idea if nobody said that to the presiding bishop of the Evangelical Lutheran Church in America. But I think the timing was bad, and it made us look naive. It made us look like we didn't quite know what we were doing. That's probably another long rambling answer to your question. I would be in favor of church bodies taking up these kinds of things, the boycott, the divestment, the sanctions, after there had been a considerable time devoted to individuals taking up some actions that really made a difference for themselves. It cost them something before they started telling other people what they should do.
I'd like to say that it's very difficult for people that are in government positions and leadership to reconcile religion on the one hand to give solutions, and then them as leaders to give solutions, because they have to play this fine balancing act that you know, there's in a secular state you have to keep those separate. So this has been an issue. What we believe is that we as people have to take the initiative, and this is what we're doing with Building Bridges. We are, I was in a conference in China actually, and the name of the conference was Dialogical Civilization. And you're asking why in 20 years we've had dialogue but there hasn't been anything done. Well, that's because we've been talking, this is part of the evolution of where we're going, and we believe that the time for that change has come. We can see that change coming into the Middle East, and it has started, and it's also starting in Europe. We can see economic changes coming, political changes, dictatorships that were ruling and despots that were ruling for decades that no one thought would change is now coming to an end. So we feel that it's the time where we can go and we can speak about our message of building bridges and of creating a policy in the Middle East that will allow for people to not talk about sanctions, to not talk about isolating people and so forth, rather to bring people together and to unite people. So we're trying to do that from the ground level. We don't, the result of policy and public policy is apparent. It is so evident to us, it is very clear. And the kind of chaotic situations that we see is a result of these policies. So we feel that it has to be from the ground level, from talking to people like yourselves and gaining your support.
Cameron, do you have something to add there?
Yeah. Not any position on divestment or sanctions, but to say that yes, dialogue has not brought results in the form of a peace agreement, but I think it's necessary to know that we're talking about different things. Dialogue among religious leaders and cooperation among religious leaders will not lead to the signing of peace agreements, but it may take away some of the issues which can be obstacles to peace agreements. And that is the role we can have. I also like to say that being a facilitator and a moderator in many of these dialogues, my role is to create a space where it's safe to disagree, where you can disagree freely and still have to listen, not run away, where you don't run away from discussions. And if we can have those spaces, it's also easier to find solutions. But for example, we've had tentative discussions about Jerusalem. It's a very sensitive issue. Jerusalem is a holy city for all three religions. Jerusalem is also one issue which was left out of the Oslo agreements because it was so difficult. And why is it difficult? One thing is the whole political issue related to it. But underlying that is the whole religious attachment which is felt by people from three religions. And if you think you can solve the Jerusalem issue without dealing with the religious leaders, you're sticking your head in the sand. The religious leaders cannot design the solution on Jerusalem, but they can say, for example, Jerusalem is holy. Everybody should have access to their holy sites. The control of the holy site should be in the hands of those who now control it, and things like that. And we're on the way to saying things like that. It's not producing peace, but it's taking away some obstacles.
Thank you. We're running a bit behind, but we have time for a few short questions if you would be as brief as possible.
Yes. Brief question. Good morning. My name is Andy Griswold. I'm an HCEF volunteer from St. Paul Parish in Cambridge, Massachusetts. So I'd like to greet the bishop as an alumnus of Harvard, but my question is for Mr. Mohseni. In your vision for the free trade area for the Middle East, I was wondering if Turkey is envisioned as being a part of that free trade zone, and also for planning your upcoming conference in Istanbul. I was wondering if you were in conversations with the volunteers or the movement that is known by various names. Here in Washington, it's called the Rumi Forum. They also have offices in a number of U.S. cities under the name of the Peace Islands Institute, and I think the general name in Turkey, I believe, is the Hizmet, but that broad-based volunteer movement in Turkey and around the world as well.
Good morning, and thank you for your question. We're not just to answer the last part, we're not affiliated with that organization. It is a separate and completely different organization. In your first part of the question was in the vision for the Middle East. Oh, yes, Turkey, the role of Turkey. We believe that Turkey will have a major role in the Middle East. If we look at Turkey now, you can see that its economy is doing very well in comparison to not only Europe, but to the Middle Eastern countries as a whole. Turkey has a little bit of ways to go in their democracy, but they are progressing nicely. And the economy is developing. They are moving away from sort of what used to be more of a police state. I believe that Turkey will have a very important leadership role. It's already taking somewhat of leadership steps. If you see it, it's acting, against the Syrian crisis that's going on now. In fact, when there was some bombings in Gaza, the Prime Minister made some moves against Israel. So it has taken a position of sort of independence somewhat, even though it is still very friendly to the United States and Israel. On the political front, there is some artificial tension between Turkey and Israel, but the people on the ground don't feel that way. Business continues as usual. Israel and Turkey has always been very good friends. In the Ottoman times, when the Jewish people were being persecuted, they were brought from Spain over to the Ottoman lands and treated very respectfully. So there's very good history between Turkey in terms of Islam, Christianity, and Judaism. And it's always been a bastion historically of civilization. Many different civilizations conquered what used to be Rome, and then Constantinople, and then now the modern day Istanbul. So historically it was significant, and we believe now it will even take a more significant role going in the future. So Turkey will definitely be a part of that.
Thank you. Very quickly, Roseanne.
Well, my question was for Mr. Mark Mohseni about your books.
Yes.
And on the web, and how important it is to educate our brothers and sisters. I'm talking to the choir because you are all very much well educated and well versed in the conflict, but to the people like my neighbors or not my coworkers currently, but my coworkers before, who do not know anything about the wonderful faith that we have, that we share between the Muslims, the Jews, and the Christians. I think your books are a wonderful way in the show that you have. And I think it's our role here, we are all members of the choir, we know, is to go out and tell people about the three faiths and how much in common they are and how many things we have in common. Because in this country we have this phobia towards the Muslims, or immediately you have an Arabic name. Your husband's a Muslim, or there's a fear, and things like this. Your talk show and the books, I think, would be wonderful. And so I wanted to thank you for having those, so that we can actually give to people or to share that the three faiths have so much in common, and basically it's all about love and peace. Thank you.
You're welcome.
One last question. Thank you, Azir.
Okay, I just wanted to kind of follow up on that, and also Paul Verdun's question. I'm from the Washington Report on Middle East Affairs, and we're going to have an article about this letter, several articles. And the Christian leaders say their intention was to put the Palestinian plight and the stalled peace negotiations back in the spotlight at a time when all the attention on Middle East foreign policy seems to be focused on Syria, the Arab Spring, and the Iranian nuclear threat. So I think the timing was important. Okay, but my question really is, the religious right, the evangelical voices here are fomenting some of this anger about Islam and Muslims. So it's kind of important what churches say to counteract that. Would you have any comments about that?
Well, I'll just start anyway. Everyone knows that in his or her own religious tradition there's huge variety. So, I mean, Lutherans, I could go on and on about the difference between Norwegians and Swedes, or the difference between the kinds of Danish Lutherans. I mean, we know our
I'd be interested to hear.
Yeah, we know the variety within our traditions easily, but we assume other people's traditions are monolithic. So part of the educational process, for instance, is to discover how many different Jewish viewpoints there are about the Holy Land, and how many different ways of thinking about anything there are within the community of Islam. It seems to me that what religious institutions might be able to do best now would be to encourage their own faithful to be as sophisticated about other people's religion as they are about their own. And if we could help people to understand a little bit more about the variety within other folks' religious life, then we would be less likely, for instance, to be terrified by Islam in every manifestation, or to think that all Jewish people believe the same thing about Jerusalem. That requires a kind of educational process and a kind of grinding it out on the ground, which again is a little more time consuming and a little more demanding than just sort of fomenting about other people, And it is certainly true that all religious traditions have their dark sides, so that nobody has any innately better holy ground to stand on than other people when it comes to that issue. It's true that there are probably people in the Christian community who have something to gain or think they do from conflict in the Middle East. But that could be said about lots of other religious communities too. And in some sense, worrying about that dark side and worrying about that negative side is tedious and unhelpful. It would be better if we could just do the best ourselves and lift up as much light as we can manage to lift up on what we see, and perhaps not worry quite so much about the bad things.
I'd just like to say one thing, or just two things about that. First, we have to understand that the administration after 9/11 began to label terrorism as Islamic terrorism or terrorists that are Muslim. This is an oxymoron. You cannot be a Muslim and also be a terrorist at the same time. So what our goal is to educate people that, in fact, Muslims are not terrorists. In the Quran, specifically, it says that if you kill one single human being, it's like as if you killed the entire of humanity. So there is no gray area. There's no discussion about that. There's no room for interpretation. That's number one. We have to clear that up, that Muslims are not terrorists. Those who are acting, they have name badges that are Islamic or they're from Islamic countries, and they're perpetrating these types of crimes and so forth. You cannot label an entire group, an entire religion as being terrorists. This is not correct. Because most Muslims are not like that, and at least those that are practicing. The second point I wanted to make is that it is very important for us to educate Muslims to be better Muslims, Christians to be better Christians, and Jewish people to be better Jewish people and follow their traditions. We're not here to proselytize and convert people. This is not our goal. Our goal and our mission is to make people that are following their faiths better at following their faiths and look at their sources and their scriptures and what it has to say. Because if we all followed that, I think that the world would be a much better place. So that's my comment on it.
Thank you, Mark. I'd like to close this session by, as moderator, by talking about the role of religious institutions and leaders in that peace building. It's something specific. As a member of the HCEF, two particular programs that have touched my heart and the heart of my congregation in our area are the Living Stones program visits, and also the Children's Peace Program. In bringing children to America from the Holy Land, we learned and listened from them. And we had an experience, one particular experience, which is very good news. One of those children, who is a Muslim girl, who I noticed she couldn't hear and therefore was having trouble speaking. And this concerned us very much. And we went back through the Living Stones program to meet with her and her family. We discovered that was a genetic problem in her family, which is very prevalent in the Holy Land, in the Middle East, and many officials are concerned about this, including the Israelis. And through a contact at the University of Michigan, a audiology department that works very strongly with a hospital in Israel, we've been able to negotiate a possible resolution for her problem and for her family. And the good news we received a few weeks ago is through our initiative, we were able to procure the necessary visas for her and her family to go to into Israel and have the hospital there in Tel Aviv address her concern and assist her family. And I'm spreading this word around because it is definitely a bridge of peace to hear that there is not only a Christian family, not only Palestinians involved, but also the Israelis who are willing to assist the suffering of a Palestinian family. And this is good news. We need more things like that, more initiatives, and we thank the HCEF for making this possible through those two programs of the Living Stones pilgrimages and as well as the Children's Peace Program. Because the children are going to bring peace to this. I really believe it. Our young people, our hearts have been affected by these movements, and that will make a big difference in the future for us. I thank our speakers today who have come forward and for your efforts for peace and reconciliation and building bridges that make all the difference in the world. We thank God for your generosity and loving concern.
Thank you.